Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on MisplacedStraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today is the definition of guitar god. He's responsible for starting the neoclassical shred guitar movement nearly 40 years ago. He's about to release his 22nd solo record called Parabellum on July 23rd. And he's the reason that I and so many others first picked up a guitar. It's an honor to welcome the maestro himself, Yngwie Malmsteen. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, how you doing? Thank you.
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Really good. Really good.
Good. So let's start with the new record, Parabellum. Your last record, Blue Lightning, it was a mix of covers and originals. So this is your first all-original record since 2016's World on Fire.
Yes.
Did the pandemic affect the timing or the recording of this project at all?
Well, I'd say yes and no, because I'd already started playing around with some songs, but I had a world tour booked 2020. Talking with that. So once they said, no, we have to delay the gigs for a couple of months, I said, okay, I just got to start working in the studio a little bit, you know. And then that turned into a year and a half, basically. So here's what happened. That once I realized that, you know, this is going to be nothing but studio work for a while, it was actually kind of interesting in a way, because I had to kind of like time myself a little bit, because if I spend too much time on something, I feel it can get a little stale, you know?
Right.
So I don't do that. I just try to capture the moments, the inspired moments, that what's really the sort of like magic moments almost. So almost a year in the studio, that was almost like 100 things that came up with. So this 10 years, like the creme de la creme of that's like the best of the best of the best I came up with for a year. So, but what I did use the time for was for like detailing, kind of like the arrangements and harmonize everything and think a little bit more about melodies and stuff like that, and arrangements, you know. But with the moments that happen when you create something, that's spontaneous. That can't be. That's time or no time. It just happens when it happens, you know.
And I always thought there was a difference between a song and a composition. In your music, in Parabellum, the whole record's a perfect example. It kind of goes beyond songwriting. I mean, they're truly compositions. And are you always composing, or do you sort of collect ideas and don't sit down to really write them until it's album time?
It's a very good question. Here's how it works. What a lot of people might not know is that the great composers, Mozart, Bach, Vivaldi, Paganini, you know, all of them, they were improvisers, and they would improvise on their instruments. And from the improvisation, in other words, improvisation is the genesis of composition. The improvisation, where they would just like, you know, play freely on their instrument, melodies and themes and pieces came up, and they got inspired, and they wrote them down. It's as if I hit record, the same thing.
Right.
So they had to write something down, but when they would perform their own pieces, so they would improvise on the stage too. So basically, the way I work is I always improvise from day one. That's all I've been doing. I improvise, and when I improvise, something happens. Something comes out. Something, wow, that's like, wow, what's that? And I have to record or write it down if I don't have a recorder, and that becomes a beginning of an idea, a theme, for instance, right? And then sometimes when something like that happens and it becomes very inspirational, I build on it by sitting down and just building on it too. It can be done that way, but the original ideas and melodies are always, for the moment, spontaneous things, which to me, that's the magic of everything. You know, as far as I'm concerned, listen, I don't want to like sound cocky or something like that, but if you want me to, I can write right now. I can sit down and write you a country western song. I can write you a death metal song or reggae song or a classical piece. I can do that right now because I have the knowledge of how to put notes together, how to songs and so on. I can do that, no problem. But to me, that's not the true magic. So I kind of almost wait for the real magic to happen, and then I make that into something that I want to use on an album and so on.
And the record has a really good flow to it, I think, with a mix of instrumentals that you're known for as well as the vocal tracks. When you're sitting down to kind of put the record together, do you say, okay, I need to have a certain number of instrumentals and a certain number of vocals, or do you just pick the best tracks and sequence?
No. I never do that when you said that. In fact, when I make music, it's always completely. I played guitar since forever, okay?
Yeah.
And I've written pieces since forever. So I don't have outside inspiration or influence. I don't get influenced by radio or TV or nothing makes me think, oh, I want to do that, or I want to make a record like that, or this and that, whatever. So I don't do that when I put together an album either. But what happens is that after, let's say, a couple of months, a couple of months in the studio, I'll put things together. I have this many songs like this and this many, songs, instrumental songs, whatever, and you start thinking of assembling it and making so that it flows well as one unit. I very much make albums. Mm-hmm. It's very important to remember, even though they released 2 singles on this album already, to me, I make albums. So, right. I would love for whoever wants to hear this to listen to it from the beginning to end, because it's I think like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's almost like you go to the movies and you see 2 scenes and say, that's good. I gotta go now.
Right. You have to see the whole thing and experience it. Yeah. A big part of Parabellum is the cover art. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and the charitable tie-in that you have with that? Yes.
Well, it was my wife's idea, definitely, and I loved the idea, so I said yes. She said, we should have a painting of you and auction out the artwork for his charity. Because we have a charity. It's for foster children. It's called April Way Children's Foundation. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do that. That artwork is going to...
When is the auction going to take place?
I think around the album release. I'm not sure. I have to see.
Okay, and I'm sure all that will end up being on your website and everything like that. So, and if we can look back,
and the NFTs it's going to be actually NFTs.
Okay.
It's going to be really good. It's going to be some serious stuff. That comes along about the same time. I'm not handling that myself, sort of scheduling, but and then of course we have a big tour in November. We have a huge American tour. Before then, we're doing some shows here in Florida and Texas, and yeah. So just look at my website and you'll find out.
And,
a lot of things going on.
That's for sure. And if we could kind of look back through your career a little bit, you first came on the scene in bands with Steeler and Alcatraz.
That's only half true, because I was a very established musician in Sweden long before I came to America.
Okay.
Yeah, and my so-called band was me on lead guitar and lead vocals, and I had a drummer and a bass player, and probably 500 drummers and 500 bass players. When I was very, very young, 10, 11 years old, I would front bands. And so when I was 18, I sent a cassette tape to Guitar Player magazine, and they invited me to come to America, basically, which was kind of a strange thing for me then, because nobody else done that. So I was thinking, so my career in America is one thing, which was worldwide, of course. Thank you. But I was very, 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 very active many years before that, so that needs to be remembered. And I was always a solo artist, always.
Right. Well, that's kind of the question, is when you started in America with Steeler and Alcatraz, did you see them as stepping stones to get where you wanted?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I was very cunning. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew that for me to get the exposure, I needed to expand the markets that I was in. And then, Steeler was, that was an interesting concept, because it wasn't anything that I really didn't like the music in that,
Yeah.
But it was I think it was a necessary step. And then of course Alcatraz.
Oh, you there? I think I lost you. Hello?
I want to start your phone. You're gonna be, come and see me tomorrow. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And so the next morning, I'm getting a phone call from somebody that says he works for Graham Bonnet. Mm-hmm. So he said, we will audition you. So I said, okay, so at least 2 auditions in one day. So I went to see the people from Graham Bonnet's thing there, and they were really goofy. They didn't have any songs, didn't have anything. The drummer had a cast on, he couldn't play drums. They said, okay, you got the gig. And they were like really excited. I said, well, let me think about it. I call you back. Like I was 19 years old and told them, I'm going to call you back. So I went over to Phil Moggs' house. He was super nice, but he was a little bit, frazzled. I didn't think he was going through some sort of stuff then. Yeah. And so I called from Phil's house to them. Yeah, okay, I'll join your thing. There's a couple of conditions. I'll write the songs, and we'll get another drummer. Okay, mm-hmm. okay. So Alcatraz was not meant to be my thing, but it certainly was. Mm-hmm.
And after you use those as a stepping stone and kind of left to start forming Rising Force, were you able to pick the musicians, to put those initial Rising Force lineups together, or was that kind of done around you?
Well, that's an interesting question, but I would like to make this very clear to everybody. No one ever told me what to do, ever. Mm-hmm. Okay, even it wasn't my band, Alcatraz. I told them who was going to be in the band. In my solo career, the background musicians that I picked, that I paid a salary to, were my choice, to hire and fire, and there was never anybody else involved with that, and there never was ever. It still isn't. So yep. I'm perfectly in control over that.
And now, Marching Out is a cornerstone record in my life. It's why I love the music I love. When you look back at some of your classic records, Marching Out, Odyssey, Eclipse, Facing the Animal, just to name a few, is there one that you look back and say, yeah, that kind of defines my sound and style?
No, I don't think like that, because first of all, I don't look back, I look forward. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I'm not very, I like to make it very clear, because it seems to be some sort of misunderstanding. In 1984, I signed a solo deal with Parabellum Records. Mm-hmm. I like to emphasize the word solo deal. The people that I hired to play on my records and go on tour with me were hired people that got a salary. Yeah. They didn't write any music. They didn't produce any music. They didn't add anything. They didn't give anything to the situation. This was just something that back then, that I did. And honestly, I don't want to be like, sounding the wrong way or nothing like that, but I don't even remember who was in the situation at one point, because it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me, first of all, is the now and the future. Yep. But and that was the same way then too. And obviously, every record I ever made, I tried to make it the best one I could. There's no doubt about that. I wouldn't say I didn't, but I feel very strongly that, you live and you learn and you mature and you learn how to put things together and stuff like that. But I always did everything myself, so it doesn't really matter who was hired to play the backing or sing even. It didn't matter. They did. It was irrelevant for what I did.
Yeah, and you talk about how you're always focused on kind of now and future, and you're not really the type of guy to look backwards. But as we begin approaching sort of the 40th anniversary of your early records, do you have any interest in, kind of the reissue or the tour that plays a certain record end to end? Does any of that interest you, or is it always straight ahead?
To reissue an album? That sounds like a pretty cool idea. But I never understood that concept of an album from beginning to end, because what I do when I go on stage, I always play whatever is like the newest thing I've done, but I always play that whatever you call the classics, like Far Beyond the Sun and Black Star and all that stuff. I always play them. So, to play any of those albums from start to finish, I never understood that concept. You know, I guess it's for some people to have I don't know. I never felt for that. You know, I mean, yeah. I don't say never for anything. I'm pretty, you know, I can consider many things, but it doesn't seem like a good idea to me. You know.
Yeah. And you know, your career is always evolving, whether it's the people that you bring in your bands that you work with, you know, changing every few records, things like that. You've handled
Can I reword that a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, you said bands that I work with. There's fundamentally misunderstanding that. First of all,
the musicians you bring in.
First of all, it was never a band.
Mm-hmm.
I never worked with them. Never. I never did. Mm-hmm. And these people it seems to me there's a lot of people that pop their head out and say, yeah, I worked with him, well, no, you didn't. You worked for me.
Right.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Who was the bass player in Frank Zappa's time in 1967?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit frustrating sometimes for me that people just don't seem to get it. He was never a band. In 1984 was Yngwie Malmsteen. Mm. You know, and I don't sound. I'm not saying it to be arrogant or anything like that. I just want to be correct. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and as you just evolve the people around you, I mean, you've done the vocals on the last few records. Do you ever see a time where you'd bring in another vocalist, or do you enjoy doing it yourself?
Yes, I will never do that.
Yeah. And you know, it was recently announced that the late Randy Rhoads is being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with its award for musical excellence, and that pretty much shocked everybody because they tend to ignore hard rock and metal and guitar players. Considering your impact on a genre that you created and still lead to this day, do you ever give any thought about your place in an institution like that?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, I have a lot of awards and so on, and they're really nice, and I really appreciate them, but it doesn't really validate me for me, you know. It doesn't validate me one way or the other, because I am extremely self-critical and extremely picky about what I do. So if I'm in that particular one, I'm in a lot of other ones. I mean, I can't remember all of them now. Yeah. A lot of different Hall of Fames and awards, and they're great. They're very nice. You know, I mean, I appreciate it, but it's not something that I don't spend any time at all to think about that. So it's, of course, really nice if it happens, yeah. But it's not something I think about much.
Yeah. And we've been spending some time here with just the amazing Yngwie Malmsteen. His record, Parabellum, is out everywhere July 23rd. You mentioned that you have some touring coming up, some spot dates over the summer and a bigger tour in November. Do you see yourself kind of being on the road for quite a while with this record?
It seems to be looking that way. I mean, you know, as they open stuff, other markets up and stuff like that, we're going to hit them too, because it's a worldwide release. So we obviously now we're going to stay on the States. I'm actually going to Europe next week. No, in 2 weeks. I'm doing a festival in Serbia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm headlining a Serbian festival.
Fantastic. So, again, the record's Parabellum, out everywhere July 23rd. Watch the website for tour dates and information on the auction and the charity tie-in and all of that. And Yngwie, I cannot thank you enough for taking some time to do this. This is truly something special for me to get to talk to you after all these years.
Thank you. My pleasure. It was great.
And hopefully we can catch you on the road soon.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yngwie.
All right. Bye-bye. See you.